Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I used to do DoorDash on the side, just for some extra cash, nothing too crazy. Until a few months ago, when something happened that I still can't stop thinking about. And to be honest, I haven't done a single delivery since. It was around 11 p.m. and I was finishing up my last order for the night. The delivery was in a quiet, upscale LA neighborhood, nothing out of the ordinary. I pull up, leaving the car running like I always do, grab the food, and then drop it off. Super normal, no weird vibes from the customer or anything of that sort. But as I walk back to my car, something feels off. I can't explain it, but the air felt heavier, like I could sense something was wrong before I even got to the door. I get in the driver's seat, close the door, and glance in the rearview mirror. And that's when I see him. There's a guy sitting in my back seat, just sitting there, hoodie pulled low over his face, completely still. And my heart stopped. I was frozen, staring at him through the mirror, trying to figure out how the hell he got in my car. I managed to stammer out, Can I help you? And that's when he leans forward just a little, and I can finally see his eyes. They were wide and bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. He leans back again and in the calmest voice says, "Drive." I don't know why, but I did. I started driving, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to do. He didn't say anything else, just sat there completely calm while I drove through these dark streets. And I'm just freaking out inside, thinking that this is it? This is how I'm going to get robbed, or worse. But then he tells me to turn down a side street. It's dark, barely any streetlights, and I'm just thinking, this is where it's going to go down. But right as we approach a gas station, well lit, a few people around, I slam on the brakes, throw the car in park, and I jump out screaming for help. The gas station clerk runs out, and I'm yelling that there's a guy in my back seat. But when we go back to the car, it's empty. The guy was gone. No sign of him anywhere. He just vanished. I have no idea how he got out so fast or where he went, but I didn't care. I got back in my car, locked the doors, and I drove straight home. I've replayed that night over and over and over in my head, and it still doesn't make sense to me. That was months ago, and I haven't touched the DoorDash app since. I don't know if I ever will. It's not worth risking something like that happening again. Ever since COVID, I have been using delivery apps consistently to get meals delivered to my house. DoorDash has saved me from cooking multiple times, and I recognize the drivers most of the time. I say thank you to them, leave a tip, and everything works perfectly. Other than an occasional missing item or issues with my order, I haven't had problems with the delivery driver. I guess I must have gotten lucky. One day, I ordered lunch from a local cafe and I waited for it to arrive like usual. I saw that it was being picked up by a different dasher and I just shrugged it off. I have it set to leave at my doorstep so that I don't have to interact with them. I got a notification and a message from them along with a photo of the package on my doorstep. After opening the door, picking it up, and then bringing it inside, I received another message. It was a picture of me, bent over, collecting my food with a message saying, "Nice ass. We should go on a date sometime." I wrinkled my nose in disgust, told them not to be such a creep, and then reported them to DoorDash. I got a general apology from the company with no explanation about whether the person was fired or not. But the fact that he knew where I lived kind of worried me. What if he decided to come back? I was tense for a week or maybe two, making sure to keep my curtains closed and locking everything up at night just in case. But finally, I fell into my normal routine again. I ordered food from a local pizza place in town for dinner. It was big enough and I could eat some, and I could also put the leftovers in the fridge for later on. I got the notification picture of the food and I opened the door to see a man standing there holding my pizza in his hand. I froze awkwardly. Sometimes this happens where they don't actually follow instructions or they want to make sure that you get the food. So I said, "Hey, thanks. This was meant to be a faceless delivery." I was reaching my hands out to take the box, but then he said, I wanted to apologize for the picture I sent you. I wanted to make it up to you." "Oh, what?" I realized that it was him and that I froze. I was not sure what to say. But then he added, "Let me in." I quickly answered, "No, you can't come in. Just give me the pizza and go." I put my hand on the box and pulled, but he didn't let go. Opening the door behind me, he stepped forward, and I didn't want him inside the house. I had a feeling that he was going to hurt me somehow. Stepping back, slamming my door and putting my body weight behind it. He kept pushing on the door, and somehow I managed to put the chain on the door, but it didn't stop him from trying to grab me. I kept smacking my body on the door, and he screamed each time that I did, so he finally withdrew his arm enough for me to close it. I locked it, and then I ran to get my phone. I screamed at him that I was calling the police and that he needed to leave. The ringtone felt like torture. I saw him at different windows, yelling at me to open the door and let him in. I'm not sure afterwards if he hid somewhere or if a neighbor coming home scared him away. And thank God that the operator was great and she waited on the phone with me. I waited for the police to arrive, and they searched around outside to make sure that he was gone. I breathed a sigh of relief and told them what happened and then showed them the evidence. They did find my pizza in the front yard, and there was a strange powdery substance on it. It was taken away as evidence, so I don't know exactly what it was or if I'm able to say what it was either. I'm guessing he intended to drug me? I don't know why he didn't wait for me to pick it up, eat it, and then just do whatever. But I'm so thankful that he was an idiot and I didn't let him inside the house. My front door was a bit damaged and had to be repaired, but that was a small price compared to my safety and my life. I don't order delivery for food anymore. I either go and pick it up myself or I just make food at home. It has been much easier. You don't know what kind of people are handling your food when you're not looking or what they could be doing to it. So stay safe and always check your food. Hello everyone. I'm a 26-year-old male who was supposed to have a bright future, or so I thought. I had such high dreams, but things happened and I ended up never reaching them. So, here I am, working as a food delivery driver. Nothing wrong with it, pays my bills, and I can do it on my own schedule. But it's just not what I dreamt of. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Today, I wanted to share an experience that I had with my job that deeply unsettled me. Working as a food delivery driver, I've come across all sorts of people and situations. Most of the time, it's pretty routine. You pick up the order, drop it off, and then move on to the next one. But one night, something happened that left me feeling disturbed. It was late in the evening, one of those nights where the sky seemed darker than usual, with thick clouds blocking out the moonlight. I received an order for a house in a part of town that I wasn't too familiar with. It was a very simple order, just a burger and some fries. The streets were narrow and winding, with old trees lining the roads and their branches swaying gently in the cool night breeze. When I got the address, I noticed there were specific instructions. The note said to call when I arrived because the gate would be locked. It wasn't too unusual. Sometimes people had gates for security reasons, and they didn't always leave them open for delivery drivers, so I didn't think much of it at that time. The drive there was quiet, with hardly any cars on the road. I followed the directions, ending up in a neighborhood with large imposing houses set back from the street. Each house seemed to have its own patch of darkness, with tall hedges and thick trees casting long shadows. And when I finally found the house, it was larger than I expected, with a wide stone driveway leading up to a tall iron gate. I parked in front and took a moment to take in my surroundings. The house stood back from the road, its windows dark and unwelcoming, and the place seemed empty. Yet I had a sense that someone was watching from within. I pulled out my phone to call the number provided, letting the customer that I had arrived. After a brief exchange, the instructions changed. I was to enter through a side entrance and deliver the food directly to the back porch, and to wait for the customer there so that I could get my tip. This meant that I would leave my car outside of the gate and just go in through a small entrance on the side. This kind of set off a small alarm bell in my mind. It was unusual for customers to ask me to go beyond the front door, especially when the area was so unfamiliar to me. But despite my hesitation, I decided to go along with it. I didn't want to cause any issues or get a bad review. I grabbed the food and made my way around the side of the house. And the air was colder there, and I felt a slight chill as I walked along the gravel path that wrapped around the property. As I reached the side entrance, I noticed how quiet it was. There was an eerie stillness in the air, the kind that made you hyper aware of every sound, like the crunch of gravel under my feet or the rustling of leaves overhead. I found the gate mentioned in the instructions. It was slightly ajar, creaking softly as it swung in the breeze. I hesitated, instinct screaming at me to turn back. The thought of leaving the food at the gate crossed my mind, but I didn't want to leave the customer hanging. So I pushed through the gate, stepping to a small courtyard that led to the back porch. The porch light was on, luckily, casting a harsh glow against the wooden deck, but inside the house did not have any lights on, which was weird. I set the food down on a small table near the back door, and I took a step back and waited for the customer. I realized that maybe I should knock or call out to let them know that I was already there. So I turned around to face the door, and as I did, a shadow moved behind one of the windows. I couldn't see who it was, just the outline of a figure standing there. Well, was standing there since they seemed to duck down so that I couldn't see them and I wouldn't know that they were there. This sight sent a shiver down my spine. Something about the way they stood, so still and silent, just watching me, and then trying to hide their presence was so unsettling. I mean, what was the reason for them doing that? I thought to myself that whatever they were planning, I do not want any part of it. So, I turned quickly, eager to get back to my car. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like eyes were following me, tracking my every move. I hurried back through the gate, letting it swing shut behind me with a clang. And as I retraced my steps, I could hear some commotion from inside the house. So I sped up and I started jogging to my car. And then I heard it, the slamming of a door when you try to open it quickly with force and it just hits the wall. And then footsteps, running footsteps. I did not look back and I was sprinting to my car. Luckily, I was able to open it up quickly, jumped in, and just as I locked it, I heard a banging on my car window and a sound of them trying to open my door. I looked up for a bit and I saw a man wearing a tank top with a deranged look in his eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked disturbed or crazy. I'm not sure what word to use exactly, but there was one thing that I'm sure of, is that I didn't want to know what his plans were. So I started my car, I backed away without a care in the world, and I'm sure I ran over his foot and hit him with my side mirror because I heard him scream and my side mirror was damaged when I checked. I drove as fast as I could away from that place, and I did not stop driving until I reached my home. And after that incident, I took a couple of days off to calm down. It did hurt me a bit financially, but oh well, I needed that break. Unfortunately, I was so rattled that I didn't even think about calling the police until days later, and I still didn't do it since I thought that it was too late, and of course, the guy would have been gone by then. So yeah, that's my story. It was the most horrifying thing that I have ever experienced, and I hope that I never meet that man again. And to all drivers out there, please, please, stay safe, always. I had an odd encounter tonight that isn't too dramatic, but it was creepy enough to me that I thought that I would share. For context, I'm a guy working as a pizza delivery driver for around 2 years now. Usually, I really enjoy the job. Sure, there's a creep or weirdo here and there, but overall, most stops don't give me alarm bells like what I experienced tonight. Anyways, I drive up to this house and I immediately get a bit of an uneasy feeling. The guy seemed friendly enough on the phone, but you never know in this part of town. And his voice was rough, like he had been smoking his entire life. He doesn't come to the door at first, so I have a minute or so to glance through the door at the guy's living room. Usually, I wouldn't be so nosy, but the inside front door is wide open, leaving only a rickety glass door between me and his living room. As I try and spot where he is in the house, a lot of times we have to knock more than once, especially if it's an older customer. I noticed that he had some photos above the kitchen door frame directly across from the front door. Normally this wouldn't be off, were it not what the photos were of and how they were placed. The first 2 photos weren't framed, and they seem to have been cut out of something. They're small and depict the same exact photograph. A grainy black and white portrait of a young boy, somewhere between the age of 6 and 10. And while it's weird that they're duplicates, what's even weirder is that they look like missing child photos, specifically the kind that you would see on a poster from the 70s or 80s. Think of missing kid photos like the ones of Ethan Pats, but specifically how they appeared on the milk carton, not just the original photographs. At first, I thought they might even be missing person reconstructions. They were so grainy, flat, and weird. And hung in between the two pictures was a little bundle of sticks. And they reminded me of those scented brooms that they sell in stores, except without the handle. On the other side of the bundle, there was an old newspaper clipping with a woman who had a hairstyle from the 60s or 70s. And just like the photos, it wasn't framed and instead just sort of taped to the wall. But before I could get a better look at it all, the guy came to the door and paid for his food, and I left with a tip and went on my way. Now, there could be a myriad of reasonable explanations for the photos, and besides, I'm in college to go into writing. I've got an imagination, and I've seen a serial killer story or two. I tried dismissing my initial gut feeling by wondering if it wasn't a memorial for a past friend or a family member. He could also just be one of those people who try and solve cold cases from home. However, the whole situation just gave me a very uneasy, sinister, and disturbing feeling that I can't quite shake. If they were just photos, I wouldn't have noticed. But like I said, these were photographed like missing child posters, not the kind of image that you'd have stuck on the living room wall in January. Even as someone who has a small vintage photo collection, my gut had a very negative reaction to them. I might be overthinking it, and I'm sure that there's an innocent explanation, but it's genuinely the first thing to creep me out on this job in a while. Working as a delivery driver at night is usually pretty straightforward. It was a job that I could fit around my classes, and it paid the bills. My name is Josie, and I have been doing this gig for a few months now. The routine was simple, and over time, I learned the best routes to take to avoid traffic and save time. Most nights were also uneventful, just me, my music, and the occasional late-night snack run between deliveries. One evening, I was on my usual shift, juggling a few orders, when I received a delivery request from a new address. It was a nice area with neat little houses and well-kept lawns. The order seemed routine until I got a message asking me to take a different route due to a supposed roadblock ahead. The message was polite and even thanked me in advance for understanding. It did seem odd, but sometimes construction crews work at night, so I didn't overthink it. As I drove through the quiet streets, I noticed that there weren't any signs of roadwork or barriers on my usual route. The streets were empty and dark, only lit by the streetlights that cast long shadows on the pavement. But I carried on, wondering if there had been some confusion. I followed the directions given to me and began to feel uneasy as the scenery changed. There were fewer houses, and the area looked increasingly deserted. The supposed detour led me down a narrow road where the streetlights were sparse. My instincts were telling me that something was off, but I was already halfway through, and I didn't want to waste time backtracking. I checked my rearview mirror frequently, a habit that I picked up whenever I felt anxious, and the road stretched ahead, empty and quiet, with nothing but the sound of my car's engine. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the address, double checking to make sure that it was correct. It was one of those newer homes with clean lines and big windows that made it look like it was plucked straight from a magazine. I parked in the driveway and grabbed the order. As I walked up the short path to the front door, the unsettling feeling lingered. I couldn't shake the thought that something wasn't right. I placed the food on the doorstep, stepped back a couple of paces, and waited a moment. The porch light flickered on, and I saw the door open just a crack, but no one came out. It was strange, so I politely called out, announcing that their order was delivered, and there was no response. The silence was so unnerving that I quickly returned to my car, just eager to leave. On my drive back, I couldn't stop thinking about the detour and how unnecessary it seemed. The thought nagged at me for the rest of that night, and the next day, I asked a fellow driver about any road work in the area, hoping to make sense of it. They hadn't heard of anything either, which only added to my confusion. I decided to avoid taking any more detours unless I saw it for myself. A week later, I got another delivery request from the same address. This time, even with their instructions, I stuck to my normal route without any deviation. And to my surprise, there were no roadblocks, no workers, just the usual quiet streets leading directly to the house. I delivered the food normally and left. As I drove back, it dawned on me that the detour request hadn't just been unnecessary, it had been intentional. Someone had wanted to lead me away from my usual path for no logical reason. The realization sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't help but wonder about their intentions. Who was trying to mislead me, and why? Were they trying to test how easy it would be to either set me up or ambush me in the future? I don't know. But from then on, I paid extra attention on my routes, and I ignored any similar request unless I saw hard evidence. Delivering food was supposed to be an easy job, but now it felt like I had to watch my back more than ever. I know that this wasn't the scariest story on here, but it was creepy in my opinion, and I wanted to share. This happened 2 days ago, and I'm still very shaken up about it. I was with my brother and father. We were just at the immigration department in Hong Kong to sort something out for us. For further context, I'm 20 and female, and I'm not a local here. It was getting late, and my dad suggested that we start taking the bus back now to eat closer to the apartment area, or most good places would be close by then. And midway there was a stop that my brother suggested that we get off and find food. We all agreed, and I started to desperately need the toilet, and so my brother pointed at the closest McDonald's that we could see. Big mistake. We go in, my brother and dad are waiting downstairs, and I was under the assumption that, well, if there's no toilet downstairs, then there should be one up there. If not, then I'll leave and find another place. I walk up the stairs and look around, somewhat pacing, as I desperately need to pee. The McDonald's worker seemed to have spotted me and was looking at me, almost expecting me to bother him. I asked him if there's a toilet, and he said, "Toilet? Through the door, turn left, and take a lift up." It's an ominous brown door with no signs or anything at the front. He's the worker, so I assume that he knows better than me. I open it, and what the fuck? It's very dark and run down. a completely different vibe to the modern McDonald's. It was extremely quiet as soon as I closed the door. It was almost soundproofed. All the bustling loud noises in the McDonald's had completely stopped, and the room was just very dark with minimal white light. There were multiple doors that appear locked in the building. I didn't explore much as I thought that it may be a staff room. I turned the left corner as instructed, and there was indeed a lift. I assumed that maybe this is just a very odd passage to a shopping mall, which isn't too uncommon in Hong Kong, and surely, how bad can this be if there's a lift, right? I press the lift and I step in, and suddenly, I hear the door open and the worker that directed me goes into the lift with me as well. I notice he's holding a black bin bag that is filled with little to nothing. I assume, oh, okay, maybe he needs to put this out and help me find the toilet. Kill two birds with one stone. I ask him what floor do I press, and he presses the second floor. Once the door closes, it's a bit quiet and awkward. I glance at him for a second, and he was wearing a COVID face mask. One eye was looking forward, and he had a lazy eye looking to the side. Suddenly he says, "Lang holing," which translates to, "You're very pretty," in Cantonese. At this point, it's very awkward, and I just said a quiet thank you to not aggregate him, and I'm wagering if I actually need to pee this badly now. The lift stops finally, and I was fully expecting a shopping mall when the lift doors open, but that was not the case. The doors opened, and it was just a dark, quiet, very rundown narrow hallway of doors. It was so dark with infinite corners. Not a single person was there but us, and I couldn't tell what the building was. An odd cross of abandoned apartment building doors and office doors. At this point, we're both still stood in the lift, and my entire body is in a fight or flight response as the whole situation was making me fear for the worst. The worker gestures me to get off at this lift and almost wants to continue walking me to the toilet. I quickly make an excuse of, "Oh, I've bothered you so much already from your work. You can just point at the direction and I'll find it by myself. Promise." He points to the right and tells me to go through there, and that's the toilet. I thank him, and then I go to a complete opposite direction that he told me. The whole place was like a fucking maze, narrow hallway with doors, and I got curious, and I pushed at one of them, and it was locked. At this point, I'm really trying to stall enough time to appear that I went to the toilet before getting the lift back down. I get a call from my brother now, a very angry call asking why I've taken so long and where am I. I explained that I don't know where I am and I'm trying to find my way back. I hang up and I'm getting increasingly more scared as the place is giant and, as I mentioned, like an old abandoned office/apartment hallways with no signs or anything while being extremely dark with minimal light. The walls were all tear down. It was just so quiet and run down. There was no way a functioning toilet was up here. I'm really panicking now, and I'm trying to find my way back to the lift scared shitless. My initial discomfort of desperately needing to pee turned to desperately wanting to leave. I calm myself down a bit with breathing exercises, and I tried to recollect the steps that I took. And finally, I found the lift and quickly pressed back down. I pressed the close button so much, and the lift takes me back down to the hallway, but by accident, I walk forwards instead of turning right. What the fuck? There are more doors, 4 to 5 doors next to each other, But what was the most strange was the fact that the doors were all facing this large glass panel wall between the McDonald's. I was able to look at the McDonald's and people eating, but they didn't notice that I was there at all. I walked back and turned right this time through the door. I was finally in the McDonald's again, but that glass wall on my end appeared to be a large mirror in the McDonald's. It was a double mirror. I looked around and there was no sight of the McDonald's worker either. I quickly walked back down to the McDonald's and see my dad and brother. My dad asked if I was okay as I looked really pale. I said that I would tell him when we're out, and I asked him if he saw the worker again when they were waiting, describing him as a man with a mask on and a lazy eye. My dad shook his head and said that he didn't see any worker when he checked upstairs for me earlier. And my heart dropped as soon as I heard that. The worker was still up the lift. My dad also said, "Don't tell me you went through that lift. I opened that door and walked through a bit to find you. It was scary. Why were there so many doors? And that glass. I thought there was something wrong. I got out immediately." Bear in mind, my dad is a built-as-fuck man himself. He then sent my brother up to go look for me. Not sure why. My brother is pretty skinny and unathletic in comparison. He said that he opened the brown door just to see and then noped the fuck out. He described it as looking like a big dark backroom with doors next to each other back to back, and he did not want to walk in there to explore. I will never go to the toilets alone again, and seeing a McDonald's will forever hold this memory for me. Edit. I found out recently, apparently, they devised a plan that my dad was going to go through every level through the brown door to start kicking down doors and shouting my name. He said that he had a very bad feeling. If he wasn't back down or back down with me within 15 minutes, my brother was instructed to call the police. My brother disagreed with the plan, suggesting that it will be best if they find all the exits and guard them now, banking on the fact that I'll be out at some point, as it's unlikely that they'll find me through every level in that lift and doors. I asked what would happen if I didn't come out through the exits, and then he said, "Well, at least we'll find your remains." Morbid. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.